Hey, this is Trent Rush. Welcome to the Under the Halo podcast, where today we welcome 25-year-old Jo Adell, a charter member of the 25U crew for this Angels baseball team. Now in his fifth season of Major League Baseball, Jo, amidst a breakout here for the 2024 Halos, we spent some time today talking not just about baseball. Certainly we get into a lot of deeper baseball conversation, but also we get to know Jo Adell, the person. I think you'll enjoy it. Take a listen. Good to see you, man. How you been?
I'm good. I'm
You're
really
early.
excited. Yeah, I know. Early bird gets the worm, right?
Is that, do you normally go to the ballpark this early?
I do. I kind of take a page out of Mikey T's book a little bit. 11:30 to noon, somewhere around there. I've gotten to the park, so treatment and just kind of getting ready for the day.
See, I feel like when I was a kid, I had no idea what time players would show up for a game. So part of me was thinking, okay, well, they're just here all the time. Then the other part was, well, for my Little League game, I'm getting there an hour or two before the game, and I think that's probably good for these guys. But no, you can put the work in way early. So you said that comes from Mike. That's where kind of it all begins.
Well, yeah. So I feel like as the years have gone, I've shown up a little bit earlier every year, almost kind of just wanting to get ahead of the curve. Everybody's different, though. There's no exact time to be at the field. I mean, obviously with the schedule, you don't want to be late to meetings, but I try to show up early enough to where I can get ready, get my body ready, and it makes sense. So
you guys go through a lot of that in terms of preparation and getting ready for games. Could you walk me through just for a minute about, what kind of, when you have a hitters meeting, what goes into that and the different things that when you're building up for what the game's going to be like? What's that like for you?
Absolutely. So most of the time when you get into a hitters meeting, right, they're going over, it's not just the starting pitcher. We're going over the entire bullpen. You're going over guys that might be in the bullpen at some point during the series. And really, you're trying to hone in on your focus at the same time because there's a lot of different hitters in the room, right? So I'm more of a power hitter. So I'm looking at, how they're pitching power hitters in the American League and, what these certain lefties are doing in these matchups and where the righties are and where they line up, what percentage sliders that we're going to see. So there's a lot that goes into it, but you got to keep it simple in the same aspect. So our guys have done a really good job this year with all the information that's out there, really making it simple and keeping it crystal clear as to what we're trying to do on an individual plan.
I promise this is not going to be a purely baseball conversation, but you got to bear with me, Joe, because I have some baseball questions.
Absolutely.
What you're doing right now. My goodness, the improvement year to year at the plate and what you've been able to do at the dish, cutting down the strikeouts. I know you're a power guy. You've been a power guy, but hitting for a higher average, it seems like it's starting to come together for you. Do you feel that way?
I do. We've talked about this a lot, and obviously, for me, the bigger focus is now I'm kind of understanding how these pitches are attacking me and what it looks like. I'm also aware of what I hit well. I think that's kind of the bigger reason that things have gone well is I'm looking at those heat maps of myself and figuring out, hey, these guys are pitching this way, but this is what you hit well. So I'm starting to look for pitches that I can do damage with more often. Obviously, I'm going to have those at-bats where things go sideways. They make better pitches than maybe what I'm prepared for in that at-bat. But one thing that I haven't given up is my aggressiveness. And that's one thing that, when I rest my head at night, I can say that I'm putting up A swings. I'm putting up the best swings that I can to put our team in a situation where we can be successful. And so when you look at kind of, yeah, I've had swing and miss. I've struck out, okay, but are these A swings? Am I putting up the swings that can help the team? And for the first part of this season, I can say that I've done that.
Hey, could we see the iPad just for a second? I want to show you. I want to show you a video. You're talking about A swings. Gregory's going to come over here and show us the iPad because we're talking A swings right here, and I want to look at this one because this was a game. I believe it was against the Kansas City Royals. What'd you hit this ball? 870 feet. Let's take a look at this. Where that pitch is middle. What goes through your mind when you see a pitch there?
Well, yeah, so this is Alec Marsh right here, and he came out, and he's been pretty dominant, honestly. When he faced us, we know that he can run that fastball in a little bit. Some of his fastballs play up, but I'm in a dead red count. I'm thinking about getting something to explode on, getting the barrel out, and really just aggressive from pitch one and not overthinking it. And then, obviously for me, that's going to be the big thing when you're facing a sinker guy and a guy with a good fastball. So,
yeah, Gregor, here, let me give this to you here. We have more video to show you later, but that's the one thing too. we've talked about this, using the whole field, using the big part of the field, being unafraid to go the other way, especially with 2 strikes. It seems like you're doing that a little bit. But when you get that pitch in the right spot, it just seems like the mindset is like, let me pound this ball and it's going to go a country mile.
Absolutely. And we've kept it that simple. I mean, we talked about the hitters meetings and what goes through, our heads when we're trying to prepare and we're facing these guys, whether it's a bullpen guy, a starter, whatever it might be. I'm looking for that pitch that, I can put us up a run. And, man, Johnny Washington, Tim Laker, they've done such a great job of keeping it that simple. In the past, I've thought about, hey, should I slap this ball the other way or should I, shorten up to, take a different type of swing? It goes, no. You got to get up there and take Joe swings. You got to take the swings that, got everybody excited, that are going to help us win. And that's what we're about. And, man, these guys don't care if it's 3-0. If I get a pitch in a 3-0 count that I think I can hit well, that's what I'm looking to do. And nobody is going to, raise a red flag on that. So pretty excited about the mindset and the way that, we've been able to work together to get to that point.
Sure. And kind of the inverse of that, too. When you get to 2 strikes, does the approach change a little bit? Because we have seen you hit the ball the other way a lot more this year than we've seen in the past.
2 strikes, absolutely not, which is a crazy thing because in the past for me.
Explain.
Yeah, because in the past for me, I was so concerned about 2 strikes and what I should do in a 2-strike count. It's still a strike zone. And I think in the past I've chased more with 2 strikes than I have now because I'm worried about, staying alive or fouling something off that's close, when in reality, if I stay in the mindset of, okay, I have 2 strikes, but I'm still trying to do damage, that limits some of the chase with 2 strikes because now I'm looking for a pitch that I can do damage with. So I try to stay mentally in that mindset of, even though I have 2 strikes, I'm going to try to treat this like it's 2-0. So that way, if they make a mistake with 2 strikes, I'm ready for it. I'm not caught off guard. And if they throw something out of the zone, I know it's not a pitch I can drive. So that's kind of how the maturation process of my at-bats has gotten better, because with 2 strikes, I'm still looking for something I can do damage with. I'm still looking for a mistake. And, I think for me that came with a little more experience and just continuing to play.
You mentioned Johnny Washington and Tim Laker and this coaching staff, but where do you get that confidence or the understanding and the, maybe, lack of a better term, maturation process of learning how to be a hitter at this level? Where do you think some of that comes from?
Well, I think, obviously not done with that. Still maturing and still figuring it out. But I would probably say, honestly, the failure too. Like, the failure is a big part of like learning at this level and being okay with stuff not going well and knowing that it's going to happen and that things are going to go sideways. But also, these bits and pieces of success that come around remind you that, hey, your work and what you're able to do is going to show up. But I would say the big part is having both of those. Having the failure at this level and having such great success too has kind of made me a little even keel as far as, my expectation, and has kind of just made me focus on my grind and not get too high and too low. If I have a great game, great. Sure. But when you go to sleep and wake up in the morning, nothing's happened for that day. And so turning the page and moving on and staying in routine and staying in schedule, I think has really just kind of elevated my game and allowed me to just focus on my routine and focus on my practice.
Makes a lot of sense. Guys, can we see the iPad again? Because I want to show you something else here, Joe, because it's not just the hitting yet. We're advanced here, the Under the Halo podcast, for sure.
You guys are locked.
And for those listening right now, we're showing Jo Adell videos. We had him before watching his swing, but I want to watch Jo Adell, the defensive player. You've talked about some of the failure and overcoming that. That doesn't look like failure to me. Go to take a home run away in Houston.
I'll tell you what, me and Kevin Pillar were having this conversation, and man, taking one back is better than hitting one. And especially in my case, for me, coming up, one of the things I struggled with that I had never struggled with really through the minor leagues until I got to the major leagues for the first time was defense. I struggled, reading balls off the bats. I think we had a conversation about in the minor leagues, you don't have stadiums with this many tiers.
Right.
So, reading the ball off the second or third deck was a little bit different for me for the first time. And now, to see how, me and Bo Porter and our schedule and our routine and just kind of the defensive comfort coming together for me, I'm most excited about. Yeah. Because I know how long and, how much of a grind it was for me to start to figure this stuff out. And so, man, taking that one away, that was early in that game, there was a home run, but man, this was the icing on top. And, it's definitely a better feeling.
There's we got to come up with some terminology for like what to call that when you hit one out and take one away in the same game. We got to come up with a term for that. I want to show you another one too, especially this one in Texas. Hang on, I just messed up this video here. This is why they don't let me touch technology. This is in Texas. This was the extra innings game when you're trying to keep the game alive. And this throw, especially being in that ballpark where I know that there have been some plays that didn't go your way, to get that done, showing off the arm, what did it feel like to be able to impact the team in a positive way defensively?
Absolutely. Man, it was huge. And I think in spring training from day one in the outfield, during our outfield meetings, I know Bo and EY, our conversation was about being aggressive, attacking the ball, and understanding what that does for us when it comes to plays like this. Because in the past, I know how I would have played that ball a couple of years ago. I would have played that ball back a little bit, probably would have been too shallow to really make a play on it. But coming in and being able to charge that ball, it was hit decently well.
Yeah.
I mean, Jankowski hit that ball decently well, and for me to come up on that one hop and play that ball through, it put me in a better position to make a throw to get him. I actually got probably 30 feet of ground I gained before I threw the ball, which was huge, because if I play that back, he might be safe, the game might be over. So again, that's another thing for me defensively, where I could be 0 for 5 in that game. Me making a play like that makes my day, because I know how I would have played that in the past and how far I've come to be able to come and make a play like this.
Joe, it's funny for me, and I don't know if funny's the word, but I'm enjoying hearing you talk about this, because where you're sitting right now is where Tim Salmon sits 81 nights a year watching Angels baseball. I sit here, Fish sits right here, and we watch you all the time. And we talk about it. And everyone sees the robberies, but playing a ground ball on a base hit to right field, that can be a tough play sometimes for you to handle that. And you used the word comfort a moment ago. Where do you feel like you've gotten some of that comfort defensively? Because it does seem like it's not just the physical part. You've always had that. It seems like you're really understanding where to be a lot more as well these days.
Absolutely. I got to give a lot of credit to Bo Porter. We've come in, first day in spring training, we were about our routine, we were about our work. And, Ron Washington talks about this all the time, but if we take care of practice and we take care of our day-to-day routine, we can let everything else hang out when the game happens, because we've done our part, right? When the game starts, it's going to be what it is. But our routine has been so solid and so buttoned up from day one that I've honestly come out here and the game has been a version of practice. And that's really what it comes down to. It really comes down to, my practice and how our work's been. One thing I struggled with was going back on balls. I struggled going back on the baseball. And what did we do? We set up basically a simulated version of the game where I would be going back on balls, right? Going back, working around the fence, knowing where my surroundings are, and just getting comfortable with that type of stuff. Once the game happens, I've already made 25, 30 plays each and every way. So now it's like, this is just kind of going through the motions in a way. So I got to give a lot of credit to them creating that practice routine where I could just come out and play the game and not worry about, is there a play that I haven't worked on? I haven't gone this way before. I haven't turned my right shoulder and done a spin move to try to make this play. I've done all of it. And so with that level of comfort in practice, it just translates over into the game. So a lot of credit that way.
For sure. It was fun seeing you get to go back home. We were talking about Louisville a moment ago, but being in Cincinnati, and you played well in Cincinnati when you were in there and had a couple of hits. And, man, for you to be able to be back, be around family, what was that experience like?
It was awesome. Most people don't know, but we actually landed in Kentucky. Our flight landed in Kentucky as we were.
Okay, I know this because I've never been to Cincinnati, but I've been to Kentucky because I've been to that airport, and I did not know the one time I visited Ohio, I was actually in the state of Kentucky. That's a little fun fact right there.
Yeah, so 45-minute drive for me. I grew up, I was a Reds fan. A lot of people don't know this, but Joey Votto I was a big Joey Votto fan growing up, just being right across the river, and so. Yeah, it was really cool. Really cool to land in Kentucky and, on that player flight and just and be out there. And I know I had some former teammates and guys that I grew up playing against that were attending some of the games. I didn't get to see everybody,
sure, but just being in the atmosphere of that. First time in Great American Ballpark. I've never played there. Obviously watched it as a younger kid, watched the games. Actually, the last game I was at, I think Albert Pujols hit a home run in that game. I was probably
couple seats away from it, honestly. But really, really cool experience. And you know, I'm always, you know, a Louisville kid, and you know, I claim that as my home, and so really cool.
I would think about like the great moments of being a player, like the ones that make you stop and kind of reset and think about your first day in the big leagues. I'm sure was a big one. Going to certain ballparks, I would think going back to the ballpark you grew up going to as a kid, that had to be a surreal feeling to kind of take that in. Did your mind ever kind of drift that direction when you're walking through Great American Ballpark?
It was crazy. My first at bat up, I was just like, man, you know what I mean? Because it's like I've watched so many players come in and bat here, and you know, I always wanted to, you know, be a major leaguer and come and hit in that batter's box, and just really cool experience, really surreal moment, and I'm glad my family was there to be able to see it, and it was just once I got on first base in one of the games, I'm like, I remember like looking down and wanting to be one of those guys, and so. Yeah, just really honored to be out here, and it just reminds you, you know, how, you know, great it is to put on this uniform and to run out and play in the major leagues. It's a grind, but man, just to think about moments like that where it's like, hey, I remember I used to sit up there to watch these games, and now you're a player. It's pretty wild.
What a full circle feeling that must be. Speaking of your family, you got to help me out a little bit here. So. I know you've always been a baseball guy, but when your dad is as great of a football player as he was, where did football fit into the equation for you? Did you play or just baseball all the way?
No, so really I kind of just did a little bit of everything but football growing up. So I had an older sister. My sister's 2.5 years older than me, and she was the real athlete in the family to begin with. But I did everything, basketball. I even did gymnastics when I was really, really young. Really? I swam for a couple of years. So we just did basically whatever was in season. Soccer for a little bit, but that's a lot of running, so I was kind of out on that. But no, I mean, football really for me, it came down to epilepsy. I was an epileptic, you know, growing up, and so for me it was, you know, kind of out of the equation. So, you know, with that many seizures, I had probably about 13 to 14 seizures as a kid. It kind of was just one of those things where it just wasn't in the cards for me to try. And, you know, baseball kind of came as a way for me to, you know, be involved. My dad always loved to play. My dad played football and baseball in high school. And so he's like, hey, why don't we try baseball? And got into it and really enjoyed it. But mainly the medical concern for me was kind of what shut the door there. But yeah, I think about sometimes like what would that have been like, you know, if I did play and how that would have been. But really it came down to that. And obviously my dad, if you've seen him, he's a large human. He's a big boy, you know what I mean? He was locking it down back in the day. There was no playing around with Big Scott, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think about it sometimes. But, you know, obviously we look and laugh in the mirror and know that this is obviously probably the right choice, so.
You and I talked a little bit about this. Yeah, I guess things did work out for you here, having a bunch of success in the big league level. But we talked about this in spring training, and you know, if you're okay with it, wouldn't mind talking to our audience about this as well. Just about, you know, kind of the challenge and the hurdle of dealing with the epilepsy when you were a kid. Was like, at what age did that start to go away, or is that something you dealt with for a lot of your youth?
No, I was actually lucky. So, you know, growing up, it was kind of triggered by light. So on the playground, if I got in a spot where the sun was too bright and, you know, I looked up and either lights were too bright or you know, something with my vision, I would kind of go into an episode. And most of the time when I'd wake up, I would be in the ambulance or, you know, at the hospital, one of the two. But, man, just really scary moment, especially, you know, for my family. You know, my mom, obviously, she's an educator, and she was grinding away in school, and, you know, just I can't imagine, you know, how much that she had to deal with and how much was on her mind during those times of trying to worry about, hey, like, am I going to go to recess and, you know, have an episode, or like what's going to happen? And I was lucky enough to grow out of them, you know, before I got into middle school. So I was lucky for that. But scary moments, sure. Absolutely scary moments. You remember the times up to when it happens, but nothing until you wake up. You know, it's kind of like a impromptu nap, I guess, in a way. So I'm lucky to be here now and be fully healthy and ready to go. But yeah, just a, a little bit of a hurdle. You know what I mean? Nothing that was going to stop me, but yeah, definitely a crazy experience.
As the father of a 2-year-old little girl, I can only imagine. And when you have kids, it changes you. I could only imagine what your parents must have felt like. They're impressive, Joe. Your family, I got to tell you, I haven't gotten a whole lot of time, a chance to spend a whole lot of time with them, but between your mom and your dad, and your mom being an educator, a high school principal, was she the principal when you were in high school?
No, she was not.
Okay, because I was going to
No,
say
she's not.
that would be a whole nother element for a high school student to deal with when mom's in charge.
No, she taught at the middle school that I went to.
Okay.
Very briefly, but yeah, she was mainly in a different county teaching. When we were in Louisville, and I mean before then Virginia, North Carolina. We've moved a lot growing up. My dad was with UPS, so there was a lot of moving around, obviously with that job. And but man, yeah, she's a warrior for sure.
What kind of impact do you feel like they've had on your life and your success now here at the big leagues?
I think you start off with my mom. I'd probably say the biggest thing from her is commitment. I mean, she's committed, her whole entire life to kids and trying to make their experience better and trying to open up a new door for them. And, a lot of people don't know this, but my mom had a lot of offers for a lot more money to, work in as a principal and work in schools that were well off. And she chose to work in those lower income schools to try to help these kids and try to get them to where they need to be. And that's what was important to her. And so when we talk about my foundation and kind of the thoughts behind, me starting that up, a lot of that comes from her and me wanting to follow in those footsteps of what can we do to help out, because, I see the need there and I see these kids that are, missing family and need some guidance. And so for her to dedicate her life into doing that and doing a really good job while doing it is huge. My father, on the other hand, is he's what I like to call my tough love, because I don't tell people this, but when I was growing up, getting into baseball for the first time, a lot of people wonder, like, you swing really hard. Like, I'm a very aggressive swinger. And I'm like, well, my dad used to take me to the batting cage when I was younger, and he would set up the net probably 15 feet away, and he would throw as hard as he possibly could. And from time to time, he'd hit me with the ball. From time to time, he would, and it would be tough love. So it would be me and him just battling one-on-one. And when you talk about just the competitiveness coming from a football player that's trying to teach an 8-year-old, some baseball, we're getting after it. And that's what he taught me. He taught me how to compete and how to, work at a high level and to claim what's yours. And it's confidence. That's what we talk about as well. Me and you talked about confidence. Sure. So when you put those two together, man, I'm just blessed. I'm blessed to have those two in my life and as my parents. And man, it just, it's kind of emotional, sitting here talking about it because of how far I've come. But what I notice is, the main reasons that I am who I am.
I know it hasn't been easy making this transition to Major League Baseball for you. And most players go through it. Far fewer really get to the other side. It seems like you are there right now. You feel like maybe that time with Dad in the cage, trying to battle as an 8-year-old, you feel like that makes a difference for you now when you've had the struggles to overcome and then to be able to kind of push it aside and move right along? You feel like that maybe made a difference?
Absolutely, because it's a level of adversity. You always remember the first time you dealt with a high level of adversity. And me going to the batting cage with my dad throwing as hard as he could from 10 feet away, it was like, this is a challenge I didn't think that I could handle. You know what I mean? But I go the next day, right? And I put a couple balls in play. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I think I can hit this guy. And this whole time, we're going to the cage, battling one-on-one. He's trying to strike me out. I'm 8 years old. This is a grown man. You know what I mean? All of this adding up is me trying to compete and me taking odds that, maybe weren't in my favor and trying to put them in my favor. And so talk about how that equates to what we deal with every day now. I don't know who's coming out of the bullpen, right? Like, it could be 104 coming out of the bullpen. I could be 0 for 4 with a couple of strikeouts. Maybe I'm not feeling too hot, but what do? I go back to that moment where it's just like my dad. My dad's trying to strike me out. this is Louisville, Kentucky. You know, we're in the cage right now. My dad's trying to blow me away. So I think that's all, in a weird way, it prepares you. And from a young age, that's what we did. We competed.
Going back to your mom for a moment. So I got to let folks know about this. Okay, so every player, and not every player, most players in Major League Baseball, you sign the big free agent contract, you get the payday, the $100 million. Everybody's got a foundation. I don't know of any 18, 19-year-olds that have foundations when they're first signing with a Major League club, except for this guy right here. Joe, you had one. And I was so impressed by the time you spent in your community providing a Thanksgiving dinner to people that could use it and just help put a smile on their face. Why was it so important for you that at an early age, most people don't think about that at that age, you were at 18, 19 years old. Why was that so important to you?
It was huge for me. I grew up, you know, my mom being a mom in a way for other kids and other families, really. You know, when you work at these neighborhood schools, and my mom worked at neighborhood schools for years growing up, that's just kind of what we knew. Like, we knew helping in the community and being involved in things that were bigger than us. And so once I got drafted, I was like, you know what, with presence and a name, you know, why not? You know, why not put something together where it's going to get some coverage and get some traction? And for us, it wasn't about anything specific. And I think we've talked about this before, but I wanted something open-ended. I wanted something that, you know, I could do multiple different community events and not be tied to one specific issue. And so when you talk about the turkey drive, it wasn't just a turkey drive that we did, right? We turned back around and did what we call Fill the Fridge, which is where we went shopping for a select group of families in the city and got them groceries for the week. And, you know, one that I've really liked now is our Cuts for Kids. I love it. It's like one of my favorite things because getting a haircut is so simple, right, until you can't afford to do it, right? And your image when you're going places, it doesn't matter who you are. It's important. It's important to look apart. It's important to look professional. And when these kids start to get where they can get a haircut once every 2 weeks, they start to understand that. They start to understand, hey, your appearance is something that's important. When people look at you, you know, they're judging. And for us, I think that was just such a huge event. And, man, just the open-endedness of the foundation is, I think, what's huge for me, because now I can do whatever. And being around a couple of the schools out here so far has been pretty cool this year as well, because I can kind of see a vision of what I can do out here moving forward as well.
The school visits are a blast, aren't they?
They're awesome.
I got to go to one with Carson Fulmer last week, and I think the one you went to, Roger Lodge, was out there with you.
It was awesome.
When you get to go hang out with the kids, man, people don't understand. Like, the kids get excited about this. We are just as excited, if not more so than they are, it feels like. Like, what do you get out of that when you're getting a chance to spend time with these kids that look up to you as a player for the Angels?
I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. And it's like I said, I was so excited to be out there with kids with so much ahead of them. Obviously a great school year for them. I was excited to just be a part and celebrate their year with them, and how excited they were to see me was awesome. I do have to brush up on my soccer a little bit. A lot of soccer fans, but we'll get to that at some point. But yeah, it was awesome. It was really, really awesome, and the administration was great over there. And yeah, just to see these kids excited and to just, you know, understand that, you know, again, that my presence really means something to them is huge, you know, and it's what fires me up. And I come out here every day and I work and you know, just to motivate them is big.
I think people see that. I really do. I think a lot of fans can recognize that, and it's pretty neat. You've also been someone that has kind of carried the weight of, I don't know, expectations. I don't want to use the word pressure, but from when you were young, people thought you were going to be this. And I know that for a while it was as a pitcher, and then it turned into being the slugger that you are. What was that time like when you came up as a pitcher and then made the transition to being a big-time home run hitting outfielder?
Correct. So, yeah, there was a point in time I think I was around 15 or 16 years old. I was starting to play elite level travel ball at that point. So, you know, I still lived in Louisville. But during the summers, I was going and playing on club teams and traveling around. And one of the teams I played up with in Ohio, they wanted me as a pitcher only, right? And it was the first time that I was like, wow, like, my hitting has been degraded a little bit. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking that, hey, I'm going to go and do the two-way thing. I'd been doing it for 2 years, right? Like that's been my thing. I would go and play, in the summer and hit and pitch on any team that I played on. And this team was like, no, we just want you to pitch. We have our hitters. And that was the first time where I had to look in the mirror and go, what is going on here? You know what I mean? I'm used to being, a 4-hole hitter that, would come in and throw a couple innings of relief or maybe a spot start. That was kind of my thing. And it was a wake-up call. And that really was the moment where I was like, hey, you know what? If I really want to do this at the level that, at a big-time level, I need to lock it in and focus, because guys are starting to, pass me by on the hitting side. And I wasn't used to that. And so that's when I really turned it up a notch and took it to a whole new level, and just really started training, focusing, getting with hitting guys, starting to try to really learn professional hitting, because there's a big difference between high school hitting and when you get in professional baseball. So really locked it in, and obviously a couple years later, I've never towed the rubber again, and was just primarily an outfield prospect, and was slated in the top 10, and obviously ended up getting drafted here and being a part of this, but. There was a point in time where I was, a mid to upper 90s starter, you know what I mean? And just to kind of see the maturation process and kind of see that change into, how much I was focusing on my making pitches to now how am I setting up at bats. I think that's what makes me grind so hard for the pitchers on the mound. That's another part of the defensive growth. Sure. I know how it is. You know what I mean? I've been on the mound. I've seen guys, dog it after balls and not make plays. So I feel just as much for the pitchers on that end. And so, but yeah, the transition was definitely crazy for me.
You think it's made you a better hitter? Just in terms of understanding the battle and the chess match that goes into an at-bat?
I think for me, what I understand is how difficult it is to make pitches. And so having that perspective of, man, like how easy some of these guys that are at the top echelon of this game make it look, it's hard to make pitches. And it's hard to put it in spots that are not hittable, And so having that in my head of understanding from being a pitcher and knowing that I can get in the box and go, what are the chances this guy can make this pitch to get me out? That's what keeps my aggressiveness up. Hey, you think he's this good, but he's got to make this pitch in this location to get you out. So we always talk about in the cage, understand they're going to make mistakes. That's part of the game. Part of the game is mistakes. So, yes, I would say so.
That's such an interesting way to see it, and I think nobody ever talks about that. Nobody ever shows that side of it. I want to get back to this as well. Being a top prospect in the game of baseball and all kinds of Jo Adell hype from before when you were drafted, and then to get here. We see it happen all the time. First rounders in baseball sometimes never even make it to the major leagues, let alone have staying power at this level. What would be your advice to maybe other top prospects now as they're trying to make that climb, and how you've been able to handle that?
Well, I'll first talk about, I went over and I got a chance to talk with Jackson Holiday. I hit with him in the offseason, as you guys might have known. But the one thing I went up and told them was stay the course and understand that you're going to get the hang of this. And that's something that, I wish I would have been able to know myself early on when I first showed up, was just a period of time. You see these pitchers, you see the way that they're pitching. It's kind of a learning process. And it's not like any other sport in that aspect, because most of the time in other sports you can draft, your top 10 picks in the draft are in the lineup right away. Right. That's just not how baseball works. Baseball is a sport where you have to be around a certain level of talent before you can understand how it is. That's why there's a minor league system. You go in, you play rookie ball, you start to understand, hey, this is the level of pitching here. You've got to master that before you move up. There's a reason why it's like that. But, man, the big leagues is just a different beast. It's just not the same. It's the biggest jump. There is no minor league jump that's even close to this. This goes from, in my opinion, this is like going from, rookie ball to AA. You know what I mean? It's that type of jump. And so I think for me, I put my head down early, when things didn't go right early on. When the reality was I just needed the experience to see it. I needed the experience to understand what I was looking at, because with my talent level, at some point with the vision and being able to be around it, the failure, the ups and the downs, things were going to come together. As I'm seeing now, the success of that. But yeah, it is. It's different than anything else. It's a humbling experience. But again, to stay even kill, which is what we talked about, of just, staying in one, not getting too far up, not getting too far down, but just staying even kill is when good things happen.
Meanwhile, there are a lot of your teammates who have had very little minor league experience and are coming up to the big leagues. We're calling them the 25U crew. I think you're a charter member of the 25U crew. I think you're maybe the first one on that team. When you're with all of these young guys, you had the night in Houston. Everybody homers and a big comeback win. You guys pick up Detmers that night. How special is it to be a part of maybe not just the next wave, but the present wave of young talent in baseball all playing together right now, hoping to build something here? What's that dynamic like?
It's huge, and I think the one thing you get out of that is the cool part about it is how comfortable these guys were able to get at this level this quickly. I mean, if you think about it, Nolan Shanwell has played. I mean,
it's like 40 days of minor league baseball.
He sent in the group message before spring training started. He goes, "Hey, where do we go?" And I didn't even think about it. I'm like, he's never been to a spring training before.
It's amazing.
You know what I mean? This guy played the half of last year and had never been in spring. And so when you think about just the small portion size of minor league games and professional games, that is in general, that these guys have played and now they're here. I thought my sample size was pretty small, and I see this. It's how comfortable they've gotten. And kudos to them for coming in and staying with their game. Because a lot of times you get to the big leagues and you try to be somebody you're not. But these guys, they were able to come in and they were able to stay exactly who they were and to find a way to be successful doing it. It's not perfect. But, man, I mean, what you're seeing from Nolan, what you're seeing from Ohapi, what you're seeing from Neto, it's just really, really cool. And good for them. It's like I said, for continuing to be who they are. And that's what we talk about. We're not trying to make clones. We're not trying to make robots. We want you to be you. So good for them.
We've heard a lot of talk about Ron Washington, what he's brought to the organization, coming in, trying to change the culture a little bit and teaching a lot of fundamentals and doing that stuff. When you're with that group of all of these young players that are really trying to make a major impact on the future of this organization, how would you describe maybe the way some of that's gone that maybe we don't get to see on a daily basis?
Well, I would say the first thing is that you're starting to see the camaraderie come together in a way that's pretty exciting. I think in the past we've struggled with that, and camaraderie is big. Whether it's joking in the clubhouse, whether it's keeping it loose on the field, camaraderie is big. When players feel comfortable, good things happen. I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. So, I've tried my best to be a guy that's approachable and to keep the clubhouse in a way that everyone feels comfortable being around me. And so when you have that to begin with and you focus on the work, which is what we've talked about, good things happen because Ron is a guy that he's not just going to assume that you know it. He's going to make sure that he sees it and that he can validate it. And when we come out here and we practice, everybody's getting all the work that they need to get in. And you can depend on each other because of it.
Joe, it's great stuff, and I love hearing that. By the way, we're sitting in the broadcast booth now. About 20 years from now, when you've had a 25-year major league career, you'd be really good up here. Just keep that in mind moving forward. So,
you know what? I've thought about it. I really enjoy it, and if it's open, you might see me back up here at some point.
Maybe there's a day where we're doing games together. That'd be fun. Joe, great awesome stuff, man. Appreciate you.
All right, Trent. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Good work. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for checking out the Under the Halo podcast, and especially a thanks to Jo Adell for spending some time with us up here in the booth. Hey, if you haven't gotten a chance to check out some of our previous editions, we had a really good conversation with Griffin Canning a couple of weeks ago, spoke with Mike Trout before that. They're available on the Angels YouTube page where you can check out the Under the Halo podcast. If you're listening to this right now, go to YouTube. That's a new element this year. What we have with this podcast is you have the ability to watch these conversations. If you're watching already, hi, good to see you. I'm Trent. I'm glad to be spending some time with you right now. Okay, that's it for us. We got a ball game we got to go check out, and we appreciate you tuning in to the Under the Halo podcast.